is Dani. Welcome to the episode. I still consider myself an amateur sewer who loves to thrift and upcycle pieces, and if you'd like to see a little bit more of how I do that, then stick around and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if there's pieces you like on my channel, don't forget to check out DaniWalkerOfficial.com because I do resell a lot of my upcycled pieces. This is a thrifted vintage piece and it's been sitting in my closet for months and I forgot it was there and I didn't wear it because it doesn't fit. I will be using a Brother sewing machine, and this is a bottom of the line sewing machine. It wasn't incredibly expensive. I spent less than $100 on it. In addition to the sewing machine, you'll also need thread and scissors. First, let me show you the entire dress. I'm not sure if you can tell on camera, but it actually is a navy blue dress, and it's this stretch fabric, and then also there's some velvet detailing and a bow, which is what drew me to the dress, but it doesn't have the fit I like. The fit is not terrible, it's just not what I want. So as you can see, I can gather quite a bit of fabric on one side of the dress to show you how big this actually is on me. I also feel like you can tell from the side because here is the back, and honestly this is my main issue. It's like when I'm standing I have all this loose fabric behind me and I'm just not a fan of that. This dress also has a slit, and I know that when I take photos I naturally tend to kind of pop my leg a little bit, and when I do that I get extra wrinkles in the front of the dress, and it's just not a look that I like in photos. So in order to get rid of all of these wrinkles in photos, what I do is I'm just gonna open up the front slit a little bit more. And when I do that, it's going to release the fabric and it's gonna minimize pulling right here in this area. If you wanna get really precise with your sewing, I would recommend using pins and taking actual measurements. But this is a stretchy fabric and I make simple alterations like this all of the time, so I'm not actually gonna use pins for this. But something that I think is important to mention about this piece in particular is it does have a side zipper. Side zippers, in my opinion, are a little bit more difficult to alter because I cannot just take fabric from this side of the dress. If you only reduce measurements on one side of your dress, then all of your seams in the piece are going to shift to one side because your dress is uneven. It's like lopsided. Now, one solution would be to remove the zipper, pull out fabric from this side, and then pull out fabric from this side because that would make it equidistant. It would be even and that would work. I don't like to remove zippers or sew them back in, and if you're a beginning sewer, that might also be something that you don't want to deal with either. So what you can do instead is look for other seams on the dress or the piece you're altering and subtract fabric from those seams. So I have a few options. I have two front seams running down the front side of my dress. So what I could do is open up these seams and subtract a little bit of the fabric. But these measurements are in the front of the dress, and my biggest issue was the excess fabric in the back of the dress. So I'm actually gonna start by altering from the back of the dress, and that's because there is a center seam right here. I'm hoping that once I open up that back center seam and subtract fabric just from the back, that the dress will have the fit that I'm looking for. Now, if that's not the case, at that point, then I will subtract fabric from these front seams. If you're confused why I might have to take fabric out of the back and the front, it's because when you alter a dress, we only have so much fabric. And we also are working with the original pattern of the dress. Sewing patterns are simply different shapes that were cut out on a flat piece of material that are then sewn together to create a 3D dimensional garment that actually fits on a real body. But sometimes we are limited with alterations due to the original shapes that we're working with and due to the shape of our natural bodies. I'm crossing my fingers that it's not gonna be a problem, but I might run into the issue that if I take out too much fabric on the back of the dress, it can create puckering and it can warp the back side of the dress in a way that won't allow it to lay flat on my body. If that's the case, I simply take out that seam, I remove less fabric from the back, and then I'll go into the front seams and I will remove a small portion of fabric from the front seams. This is usually going to give you a much better result because it helps a garment to maintain balance. So if you look at a garment from the side, if we're pulling out way too much here, it could end up sending the entire front of the dress up and back. And if we want to avoid that, then we have to subtract equal amounts of fabric from the front and the back to maintain balance. But let's see if this garment is going to require me to do that. First, you're going to find the seams that you want to sew, and then you're going to turn your garment inside out. I forgot to add, you're going to need a seam ripper for this. I'll link one in the description. First, you're going to use the sharp end of the seam ripper to pop the first thread, and then you're going to flip your seam ripper over so that the dull side, or the part with the red tip, is inside of the garment, and this is going to help to ensure that you don't rip the garment. I like to start stitching a few inches above where I seam ripped. This way I can slowly curve into the garment, and it's going to help me to avoid any funny bumps along the seams. Since this is a very heavy garment and it's hanging over the edge of my sewing table, I made sure to hold both ends of the fabric in place. This isn't always a necessary step, but this is something that I do with the stretch fabric to make sure that none of the fabric is pulling. When you purposely stretch a fabric as you sew, this is how you create a ruffle, but I don't want to create a ruffle or any bunching. I want a really smooth, seamless line, so I'm just holding that fabric in place to make sure that there is no pulling. Next, I tried on the dress to check how the fit was going, and I realized I am gonna have to take out a little bit more fabric, but in order to keep the garment balanced, I decided to subtract the fabric from the front seams of the dress. Once again, I'm gonna locate the seams, and then I'm gonna turn the garment inside out. Since I'm only taking out a little bit of fabric, I decided that I wasn't gonna open up the seam. Instead, I'm just gonna sew right beside the original seam. The next thing that I wanted to tackle was the slit. So the first thing I did was open up that slit a little bit higher than I thought I would want it. Then I used a pin to mark exactly where I wanted to close up that seam, but you could also use sewing chalk for this as well. Since I opened the seam of the slit, I also tore open those stitches, so I have to re-stitch the hem of that slit. After doing that, now I can close up the slit to the part where I want it to be closed. The last part of this particular slit is just an extra step to make sure that the stitches don't come apart. I created a horizontal stitch right above the top of the slit opening, and this is going to help to prevent that stitch from ever opening up in the future. I finished alterations with the dress. I'm really happy with it. I feel like it fits so much better than it did before. It took a total of 6 adjustments, but they were really minimal. But I'm really happy with this. I feel like this is a great dress that you could wear for a wedding, if you're a guest, you could wear this for a nice night out, or you can make it really, really casual and just wear it with flats. So that's why I like this one. I found out though, I looked in the tag and it was made in Paris. So I'll probably wear this one and then end up reselling it on my site, DaniWalkerOfficial.com, if you're interested. But let me show you the full dress. See, it just hugs my body a little bit more. It's not skin tight, but I just wanted it to be body skimming. I didn't want any pulling on the dress. I might even wear it just without the strap, honestly. It doesn't really need the strap. I could just tuck this in. Here is the completed look. As you can see, it fits so much better with this. I like the slit length because, like I said, I usually pop my leg in photos, so it's nice to be able to just pop my leg and then the dress still lays pretty flat, which is something I like. I'm so happy. Voila, it's as easy as that. I hope that you really enjoyed this alterations episode and that it inspired you to thrift more and to start your own alterations. Thanks for joining me. I hope you'll come back for a lot more thrifting and upcycling episodes. Bye.